Hello, everyone out there in YouTube land and Facebook land. This is Dawn DelVecchio coming to you live from Sedona, Arizona. Good morning. It's early June 2019, and early this morning, actually in the middle of the night, I got the tap from my guides to get up and meditate at my altar, and an important download came in that I wanted to share with all of you. Hey there, Rupi. Hi. Greetings from Sedona, Arizona. Long time. Hope you're well. Okay, so hi there, Lynette. Thank you for joining. Okay, so today's theme, today's topic, based on this divine download that I received in the middle of the night is, I'm going to read from my big screen here, personal development, shadow work, and spiritual liberation. Important distinctions between these on the Ascension path. And this is really for the light workers, healers, helpers, and priestesses among us. So there are three key phrases or titles or descriptions that many of us bandy about, well, more than three, but I want to talk about these specifically, that have been in the field of personal growth consciousness for many years. The first is personal development, sometimes called personal growth. And we can think about people like Jim Rohn and Les Brown and many inspirational speakers, motivational speakers who are talking about this topic. Then there's the subject of shadow work, and many healers are doing incredible transformational work with clients and groups in the realm of shadow work. Debbie Ford is one of the most famous ones, and I think the term may have been coined by Carl Jung, and many processes from hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming to deeper processes like breath work, things like that to go into our deep psyches and find the shadow. And then there's the phrases spiritual awakening, spiritual liberation, ascension, and Christ consciousness. So I want to address these in and kind of tease out the distinctions and how they relate to each other and how they serve and support each other. Because, okay, so let me begin by connecting in. I'm thinking of like a Venn diagram where there's circles interconnected. So I want to make something clear to begin, that these aren't separate completely or in some kind of linear fashion. So even as I have to use words to describe these things in our three-dimensional world, I want to frame this up by saying there's overlap, okay? Okay, so personal development. Personal development, I don't know the back history of where this came from, but personal development, when we begin, are tools and ideas and skills that help us to take full responsibility for our lives, to really own what we are creating, and to set goals, intentions, and direction for our life so that we can have inner competency and success. So personal development, I believe, is a very important part of our overall reclamation of our sovereignty as mature adult humans. Personal development is not necessarily spiritual. It might be, but not necessarily. It could be very much related to how to have success in a career and be a positive influence in your community. So I see personal development as something that could be driven very much with the mind and not necessarily have a lot of what we would call emotional energy around it. Now, the next piece of this is shadow work, or the next sort of vertical, if you will, and again, they intersect. Shadow work is when we begin to go inward and look at the subconscious operating system that is driving us that we're not aware of. So this is where we so personal development is very outward focused. It's like you set your goals, your objectives, you break them down, and you do work on yourself in terms of like your beliefs that may be limiting you, that kind of thing. But it's outward directed and focused primarily. And again, there's a lot of gray areas, so I don't want to say one is only this one thing. But generally speaking, it's very possible to apply a lot of the personal development principles, goal orientation, personal responsibility, inner competency, without any kind of deep spiritual inquiry. There's some, but it can be very much focused on setting your goals, focusing on them, doing a vision board, staying focused there, and affirmations and going outward. Shadow work is very inward. This is about having the courage to face the deepest fears within, to look at early childhood or incarnational trauma, to look at assumptions or beliefs that were imprinted upon us when we were little, that we've been applying to our lives to undermine our actual success, our quality of life, our happiness, the quality of our relationships, etc. So I've done a lot of work in shadow work, I would say more than personal development, but both. Because I feel like as much personal development as we do, if we are obstructed by toxic early childhood imprinting, trauma, etc., it's going to be very hard to achieve any goals we set for ourselves, because the conditioning from early childhood is dragging us back. We have to go in to clear the trauma, clear the programming that doesn't serve, clear the imprints. And so I serve a lot as support for some sister friends doing powerful shadow work retreats, etc. Sometimes I'm just there to hold space. Sometimes I'm doing tarot readings or astrology readings. And I facilitate some of it myself, but that's not exactly my area of expertise. What I have found over the years of both witnessing and doing my own shadow work is it's characterized by a lot more crying, release, emotional surrender, this kind of, deep breakdown to break through. Whereas a lot more of the personal development group experiences can tend to be more rah focused. Yeah, I can do it. Pump us up. Shadow work is surrender. Show your raw, vulnerable self. Now, I believe both of these are crucial at this time on the planet. The personal development helps us develop, but the shadow work helps us heal. So I want to just read a piece, and then we're going to go into the spiritual stuff and spiritual bypass and what happens when we don't do this work, but we're naturally spiritually inclined. This would be my story originally. So personal development takes us out of any kind of victim consciousness, and by victim, I don't just mean victim against a perpetrator, but like the external world has control over my circumstances. I don't have agency here. So it takes us out of any kind of victim consciousness and provides skills for competency and personal agency. It's very motivation driven, and I would say in terms of the energetic frequency, masculine in nature. That doesn't mean that it's only for men. It just means it's a masculine external driving energy. It's goal directed primarily. Now, shadow work, on the other hand, can be said to be more feminine in the frequency. And again, that doesn't mean it's just for women. It's about receptivity, internal, emotional experience. So more feminine in nature, internal, emotional, experiential, and process-oriented. Shadow work focuses more on healing and integration. Healing and integration. Integration of our shadow, which sometimes are our gifts and strengths, not just the scary bad stuff, for wholeness. So again, personal development is sort of goal-directed, external, motivation-oriented, positive in nature, focused outward. Shadow work is about healing and integration of that which has been in the shadow so that we are self-actualized and whole. In order for us to actually move into more of a spiritual liberated state, personal development and shadow work are perhaps I would say not even perhaps, although that's how I wrote it in my journal this morning at 3 a.m., are prerequisites for most of us. Why? Because as long as we feel that our lives are dictated by external circumstances, that's where the personal development comes in to help us claim agency. And as long as we are being internally driven by unintegrated shadow material in our psyches, and that's where shadow work comes in to help with that. If we aren't doing those things, if we're, believe we're externally controlled and we're subconsciously being controlled by shadow material, we are not resourced enough to actually awaken, to actually be liberated spiritually. So both are important. And so there's great value in personal development and great value in shadow work. But please make no mistake, these are A-R-E, means to spiritual awakening and spiritual liberation, Christ consciousness. They are not ends in themselves, okay? So we are not here to do endless amounts of process of shadow work of our suffering and our misery over and over again. Nor are we here simply to drive for one goal after another, after another, after another, only focusing on this 3D world. We are spiritual, divine connected beings having a physical experience. At some point, we have to go vertical to reconnect with our divine essence. We can't do that if we are blocked because we've never done any personal development work or because we've never done any shadow work. Now, that leads to the next piece, which I would say I fell into this category very much, which are the people who come to this life with a deep spiritual calling and yet are unwilling or unable or they're not resourced to find the information about personal development or shadow work. So if you are a person like me, and there are so many of us right now, or like I was, who came into life circumstances that were less than optimal. Maybe you had very limiting beliefs about money and success. Maybe your family, I should say, you were given limiting beliefs about money and success. You were traumatized early in childhood through abuse or neglect, or family constellation issues that created trauma in you, even if your parents were doing the best they could, right? And yet you had a very strong spiritual inclination. It becomes very easy to do what I call the spiritual bypass shuffle. So you begin to want to go direct to spirit without dealing with all of the baggage that's back there in your subconscious, and without having the tools and resources of personal development to claim personal agency, to recognize that you are the creator of this and that the world owes you nothing. You are here to create it for yourself. That's the personal development piece. So what we find in the spiritual community, and those of you who are on a spiritual path will recognize this possibly, maybe you'll recognize it in yourself, maybe not, that there are a lot of spiritual people who are not actually doing their inner work. So what happens is they talk the spiritual language. It's all good, everything's good. And then as soon as you push a button of theirs, unintentionally often, they fly off the handle at you, projecting onto you all kinds of stuff, or projecting onto others, blame, shame, attack, even if it's couched in very spiritual language. And so, for example, I live in Sedona most of the year, and so I'm on certain Sedona bulletin boards here, Facebook groups, etc. And it's interesting to see sometimes the way the almost vicious nature in which some of the supposed spiritual people will attack. When their own buttons are pushed, when when their beliefs are challenged. Another way you see this are the spiritual leaders who are absolutely out of integrity. They do not walk the talk. Now, I don't want to put people down. What I want to do is shed light on a situation here, which is that if we don't do our shadow work, we project it out onto others. and can end up with a messiah complex at the worst. And we saw that here in Sedona a couple of years ago, a young man coming through who's supposedly the spiritual teacher and starts talking about that he's actually more conscious than Christ and than Jesus, and some other weird stuff, and a weird energy in the community, and some just weirdness. Okay, let's just say weirdness. We've seen it a lot. I mean, you could look to Jim Jones and, the Guyana group suicide, and many other examples of the gurus who sexually abuse their followers, their community, etc. There's so many examples of this. And this comes from spiritual bypass. This comes from not doing their own shadow work. And those who are not doing their own shadow work and are not doing personal development are the ones who are vulnerable to following a guru, a spiritual teacher who may or may not be in integrity, and probably won't be. Why? Because if you're not claiming your own sovereign agency for every aspect of your life, then you're looking for a savior. And if you're looking for a savior and you've got a lot of shadow material that says you're unworthy or whatever it is, then it's very likely you're going to be a vibrational match for someone who's less than in alignment with their spiritual teachings. So there are masters on this planet. Some of them are teachers, not a lot of them. Most of them are hiding out because they become very humble and they don't necessarily feel the need to engage much in the world. There are those of us who are teachers of spiritual principles who recognize that we have not achieved spiritual mastery, but we are on the path. And along the way, we want to share our insights. Please understand that you are here having an experience as an eternal being, and that part of your path at this time on the planet is to awaken fully to the true nature of who you are as a divine being. And that is when you can align with the Christed consciousness of the understanding of the oneness of all things, that is love. The more you do your personal development and your shadow work, the more capable you will be of aligning with that high vibrational frequency and integrating it into your life. If you choose only to be spiritual and say, it's all good, I'm good, I don't have any shadow, well, maybe you don't, but good luck. Notice what happens. Notice who's showing up in your life. Notice how triggered you get by life circumstances. Do you feel at peace when there's drama falling, coming around you? Are you triggered by things? Whatever it is you're triggered by, that's your invitation for the inner shadow work. Do you have goals and aspirations that you have not achieved and they seem eternally out of your reach? That's where it's time to cultivate and develop and educate yourself on personal development. So they all are of a piece. And so as I said in the beginning, this is a bit like a Venn diagram. If you imagine 3 circles, there's the personal development circle and the shadow work circle and the spiritual awakening circle. And they all have a way that they're interconnected. And so, but when you disconnect them, you don't actually have the wholeness of what's possible for you, and actually what I truly believe we all came here for. Thank you so much for the love. Thank you. Which is to remember, RE-member, to put back together our true divine nature, our wholeness as spiritual beings connected with the one true Mother, Father, God, having a human experience to remember we chose separation and begin the return back to unity. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that adds value to you for your life. Again, summarizing: personal development, shadow work, and spiritual liberation, that we may return to the oneness of all that is, which is love. So if you found value in this, thank you for the love. Who was that? Danny, thank you for the love. Anyone else, if you find value in this when you're watching now or later, I'd love a thumbs up. If you know someone who would find value in this, please share it with them. And if you are interested in receiving more guidance on your path, on activating yourself in a way of personal development, looking at your shadow material, I want to invite you to consider working with me. There's a number of ways I do that. Certainly an easy way to start is with the Foundations package, which offers you a deep dive soul evolutionary astrology reading that really, we go very deep into what your soul came here to do in order to have that spiritual liberation. And I leave my clients with specific actionable steps of what they need to do that's based on their unique configuration. And that is that could be any one of a number of things. I have a huge resource pool of resources of friends, healers, helpers, shadow workers, all kinds of things, books, educational programs that I can refer you to and do in order for you to take the next steps. So I invite you to consider that if you resonate with my work. For the priestesses among you, remember I have retreats where I train you in how to hold the space of sacred feminine in service to your community, your family, your work in the world, your vision, your mission. And the next juicy one is in Bali in October over the Halloween weekend. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I would love to circle with you there. If you are a brother and you are interested in men's work, deep shadow work to transform and empower you truly, reach out to me. My husband does that kind of work, and he can speak with you and share with you ways to do that that are incredible in your community or in a community near you. Okay, so let's see, a little message here. Thank you, Shiva. Hey, good to see you, Shiva. Mwah. It's been many years, brother. Okay, so with that, I'm going to sign off for now, and I will leave links below the video for you to explore if you're interested in some of the things I've referred to. With that, I offer you deep love and much appreciation for being here and for being on the planet at this time. Because if you're watching this, I know you are one of those ones who is here to truly awaken. So thank you. Many blessings. Bye for now.